Hi, my name is Jessica. I'm 31 years old and I'm from Sacramento, California. I remember my childhood to be more difficult. I'm the second oldest of five. And so at 10 years old, my mom had two more siblings, and I already had another sibling I was taking care of. So I remember my childhood being more like a parent rather than being able to do many things that a kid would do. When I was around 10 to 12 years old taking care of my siblings, I had really bad experiences, some with being hurt physically by people and by loved ones around me. But I didn't feel safe to say something to my mom. I didn't want to lose my mom for her protecting me. So I had gotten molested by some cousins and some people that my mother knew. Those very hard things happened from the age of 10 to 12. From 16 to 17 years old, 18 years old, I was constantly with women. When I was 14 years old, I had a bad experience with a quote unquote best friend who took advantage of me. But that led me down this track to constantly be with women. I was insecure about being a woman, so I felt more like a man, and I leaned more into masculinity. So 16, 17, 18, I explored more with boy clothes. I explored more with dating apps and being more promiscuous and drinking. And I led myself down a pretty bad path at such a young age. Having just a single mother with no father, that really played a part in my foundation of thinking that women were not worthy of love, that men were also bad. And so 16, 17, 18 was also very pivotal in my thinking, made me feel more comfortable protecting myself by being more masculine than being more feminine. At 16, 17, 18, I was pretty close with my mom in the sense that she supported my basketball games, that she was present at things I did in school. But in regards to feeling that compassion and that love and more tenderness wasn't really there. But my mom was present. I didn't tell my mom about the abuse because I knew my mom would protect me. My mom was more like a father than a mother because she was alone, working, taking care of 5 children. She did what she knew how to do, which protect and provide. I started to think that I was born in the wrong body at that age. Those teenage years, my prime years. I'm really tall. I have bigger hands. I have bigger feet. I had a lot of insecurities at that age. I was bigger than most girls in high school. I was on the basketball team and I did use my height to my benefit, but it didn't take away from the insecurities I had. I leaned more into women and a certain type of woman because they look like what I wasn't. I liked more of these little Latinas is what I would say, but I was this tall woman, and I think that now as an adult I realized at that age I liked what I wasn't. I found it attractive because I wasn't that perversion of this view of my insecurities. My process towards getting surgery and starting hormones happened so quick. I was in a college class in Sacramento, California when I learned the word transgender. And for me, at 21 years old, finding out this word to me was my aha moment where I finally found what I thought was alignment. This must be my answer. When you have this transgender ideology or thinking that you are born in the wrong body, that you don't feel safe or secure, that you can change that. And when I found this word, I wanted to change it as quick as possible. Within 2 days, I cut my hair. Within 1 month, I came out to everybody. And within another month, I changed my name legally. And by the end of that year, I was already taking my first shot of testosterone. When I first took these hormones and when I first went down this path, the adrenaline I got, the rush, I was doing my shots every single week and alternating between my thighs and then in my stomach. And when I was taking these shots, it felt cold. I felt this rush in my body. I was starting to get strong. I was starting to lose weight. I was binding my chest. I was feeling more masculine. The beard was trying to come in. I was cutting my hair, going to the barber, spending $60 every single week to upkeep this image that I was, quote unquote, finally happy with. And when I had this moment, it was starting to feel really good. Within the first year, I met a woman who would love me as this trans man. And I started to create this life of quote unquote happiness. In Sacramento or in California or even in the US, we call that the American dream. Having a family, having the house, having the cars. So when I was finally on testosterone and finally had the surgery 2 years later, I was thinking that I was finally fulfilled. When I was in this journey of transition, I did look for emotional support within the trans community. I wasn't born in a Christian home. I didn't know that the Lord loved me. So my support came from other people who were doing the same things to themselves in quote unquote trans support groups or trans support groups online. I was active in communication, but secretly comparing myself to the next trans man. Could you tell? Could we get away with this? Am I really ever going to be that man? Because I had gotten top surgery and removed my breast, but I did not get bottom surgery. So I was constantly comparing myself to the next trans man who was a step ahead of me. As I was on this journey with hormones, I think that I reached the bottom of myself and reached my lowest point when I chose my wife at the time over my family. I was put in a really hard place between my mom and my family and my wife at the time. And in this place, I was so isolated because I did choose my wife and I did choose the trans life and I did choose what I thought was the American dream that would make me happy. But it didn't. And so I then started to have anxiety. I started to have depression. Constantly in my head of comparison led me to start to have more suicidal ideations. So that high that I was on in the first couple years, the first 5-6 years, started to go away. After having so much emotional support and finding these other trans men and other trans men and constantly comparing, I started to go down this really bad track of losing myself and reaching the bottom. That came with anxiety, with depression, with suicidal thoughts, because these other trans men were quote unquote steps ahead of me, having the next surgery and the next surgery. And so then I was constantly in my head of, am I man enough? Because I didn't have that. So at a young age, I compared myself, am I woman enough? Am I like these other women? I must be a man. And now I have these hormones and build this life, and it's supposed to be better. It's supposed to be everything that I wanted. And yet it led me down more comparison than before, just in a different way, with the anxiety, with the depression, with the suicidal thoughts. It led me to several suicide attempts. And after years on hormones, I did have my attempt that changed everything in my life. That attempt led to my encounter with the Lord. I took a bunch of pills and was sitting in my car waiting to die when the police came and knocked on my window, and they took me to the hospital to pump my system, and then they took me to the mental hospital. And in the mental hospital is when I realized I was supposed to be here. When I met the Lord, when I saw the sliver of light, I then started, they give you antipsychotics, antidepressants, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. And while on these medications, I started to feel like a zombie. But then I started a new job and started to get my life back after this suicide attempt. At this new job, my boss at the time had told me that Jesus loved me, and that was my official introduction to Jesus. In the mental hospital, I saw that there was light and I was meant to live. But at this job, he told me that Jesus loved me. And I had a beard and I had short hair. And to this day, I don't even know if he knows the journey that I'm on. But I identified as a man, and he told me that Jesus loved me. Even if I talked to my family or not, that he still loved me. And from that moment in 2020, it changed everything about my life. I actually have some favorite Bible verses that helped me on this journey, especially in the beginning, which was Romans 12:2. Don't copy the behaviors and custom of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. And then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. And that one was the start of everything in my life, because I realized any transformation I wanted, not thinking that I needed to go be a girl, but just transformation, to not be sad and anxious and depressed. It had to start in my mind. It had to start with the way I thought, and in my heart, and just in my head, and in me, inside. Not just change your clothes or not just dress nicer, but the transformation starts inside. And the other scripture verse that changed everything was Psalm 139, verses 13. You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well we know it. You watched me when I was being formed in utter seclusion. As I was woven together in the dark of the womb, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day. And to me, that was so important, because I realized that God knew me before I was even in this world, before I even came out of my mom. And upon this revelation was when the Lord revealed to me that Aiden was not in the book of life, because I did not create him. In this psalm, he knows who he created, and he created Jessica. And out of my pain and trauma, I created this other person, quote unquote, named Aiden. This man, this figure, this quote unquote protector I needed, which was really him. I needed him as Jessica, not to create, to be a man, but I needed him as I was, as Jessica. As I was on this journey of revelation, the people in the church came alongside me. They supported me. They met me with a beard and short hair. And as I was reading these scriptures, as I was at the altar, as I was taking communion, understanding that Jesus died for my sins too, the church saw how serious I was about the Lord. And so they embraced me. They loved me. They took me shopping. They prayed with me. They took me out to lunch. They got to know me and saw that I was a broken girl. The way that I'm able to tell my testimony now was because of experience with them. I had so much support in the church that my life now has been so different. When these ladies took me out, when they took me shopping, I got to find my femininity. I was safe enough to do that. I was surrounded by love and support to find myself. Something young people experience in high school trying to find themselves, I found myself while in the church with these ladies. I've got to find my style, find my support, go to prayer. Now, God has grown my chest back. I'm able to have kids because I stopped comparing myself. I didn't get those surgeries that the other trans men got. God spared me. And now I'm able to feel the deepest desire, which has always been family. But now, the way that God wants me to, in my femininity, as a woman, how He created me, I am a woman and I understand that.